Economic model, the capitalism, does not work. Now the time is to change that economic paradigm. Capitalism as an ideology and as a political program comes to an end, and something very new will replace that. Hi, here is Markku Wilenius, the traveling futurist. Next 30 years will mean more changes and transformation than the last 300 years altogether. Let me explain you. For the last 200, 250, even 300 years, we have been going through a process which is called industrialization. Now this industrialization has taken over the periods of time such a shape that using technology we have been able basically to increase our labor productivity. So, starting from spinning jenny, steels, railroad, electrification, personal mobile system, cars, digitalization. All of that actually meant that we have changed the world dramatically by increasing our labor productivity. By some measure, it's been now increased about to 20-fold from where it was when this whole process started. So it's been quite a change. And the structures and the institutions and the ways of life that were built alongside paved the way for what is the world today. So the world today is a result of those processes and structures. And we can of course say that, wow, it's been incredible times. The world has changed indeed dramatically, because if you remember before that time, in the 17th century and the 16th and 15th and so forth, there was practically not a thing that is called scale-up technology. There were technologies, but they were only for a very small group of people. So what basically happened with industrialization was the scaling up the processes, the mass production that enabled mass consumption to happen. Now, some economic historians have called this era capitalism. What is capitalism? Capitalism is an ideology and political program that says that we should ensure in the society that private interest defines the markets, and that the shareholders of those companies that owns the markets, so to say, buy their products and services, are getting the rewards of those transactions that take place on the market. This has been the engine of this building up of industrial societies. But now the question has become, is this a healthy way to move forward? We see all kinds of issues and problems that has arisen just because of letting this private interest to occupy our world. And lo and behold, a lot of the problems that are related to this capitalism that has this far been more into the marginal because we have been benefiting so much of it, are now coming to the fore, are now coming to the stage, so to say. And that means a lot. So we need to start to rethink how we are actually building our societies up from here. And that is a hard process because we have a huge amount of history behind us that has pushed us to a certain development path that we have followed up until this point. My way of interpretation of what has happened this far and what sort of guides us into the future happens through the lenses that I have created by looking at these long-term dynamic development waves of society during this time of industrialization. And we have seen that there are actually 5 dynamic waves that happens this far. The last one being the one where the digitalization was sort of brought up to the stage, starting up with early 70s, the first microcomputers being built somewhere in the garages of California by Steve Jobs and the others. So they became a huge movement that brought us into this point where we are now, with all new kinds of technologies, AIs, machine learning, and now blockchain. But at the same time, there has been also an idea that while these 5 development waves have taken us this far, something is building up such a way that it would lead us to a very different type of the next wave, the 6th wave. This 6th wave, I believe, is gonna happen somewhere between 2010 and 2050. So we are actually on that way already, have been that way for the last 10 years. So what are those signals that say that this time, this wave is gonna be very different? There, firstly, is the fact that the values of the people are changing around the world. This is not just my opinion. This has been verified by a lot of research, particularly the study that has been done since the 70s, which is called World Value Survey. This World Value Survey has looked at the value change in different parts of the world. And what it tells us, by and large, is that there is a tendency to go towards postmodern, more intangible values. So we are kind of getting out of this very materialistic way of looking at the world. And this is reflected in the ways people are weighing different types of the preferences in their lives. So they still like to have income, good incomes. They still want to have a house and all those other amenities of the modern life. But they also want to have something more. They want to have a clean environment. They want to have a meaning for their life. They want to contribute to society in one way. And these type of values have been rising rapidly, telling that if our economic system, called the capitalism, is still basically addicted just to look at the profits of their shareholders, it runs against this rising idea of let's take care of our environment, let's take care of our society, let's take care of those who are being left in the margin. The second very strong signal that something is changing comes from the technology side, because there are numerous new technologies, from biotechnology to resource-efficient kind of technologies to nanotechnologies, and the use of the AI and blockchain, which are now rising very fast. All of these different technologies are basically building a new capacities to produce energy in a clean way, without harming environment and polluting, making communication much faster and less need for travel, for instance, and generally building up the kind of a much more intelligent economy where the idea of the circularity is there. We are not wasting our resources, we are reusing them. We are becoming much more conscious about how we are impacting in our world. All of this is rising. It's still not dominating our world, but it's much more than marginal event. The third very strong signal is obviously this. We are all becoming very much aware of the potential calamities of the climate change and the destruction of our natural habitats. Most of the world's biosystems, which is called the ecosystems, are in danger. And climate change is not something that we think today that is far out in the future. It is a reality that we are living in our everyday life, and people around the world are already experiencing the impacts of it. So a lot of those things are happening which tells us that economic model, the capitalism, does not work. I suggest that we start to seriously look at the ways that how the capitalism as an ideology and as a political program comes to an end and something very new will replace that. Because there are, as said, so many signs around to tell us that actually a new world is about to emerge. New economic model which takes account into the environment and the social aspect of things. And that means that the companies and the states, who are actually the ones that have the institutions and organizations to produce our world in a way, need to shift accordingly. Their focus need to move from being solely focused on private interest when it comes to the companies to the public interest. So the companies need to take into account what are they actually contributing to the society, and if that contribution is simply not there, or it is in the old form of, okay, we can pay our workers, this is not enough in the future when we are moving into the next phase of our economic paradigm. This change, which is now going to happen from now up until 2050, it's going to be a lot of drama. And we have already seen some of the beginnings of that drama. And much more there is to come, because we have to completely arrange, completely restructure and regenerate our societies as we move forward. Because unfortunately, we have come to the point where so many of the unintended consequences are impacting on our immediate future. And we simply cannot let that happen as societies. So, after capitalism comes collaboratism. And this collaboratism means that in that type of economy, we are seeking collaboration rather than competition. We are seeking public interest and not the private interest. And the state needs to be supporting this also heavily, but it does not mean a socialism in an old sense, because it is about our enterprises, it's about our free expression in the market that needs to be defined. But these free market ventures need to be defined in such a way that it really contributes to the whole. That's the whole point of that. And so, summarizing, capitalism made its way to the industrial society as its basic economic ideology. And that spanned over almost 300 years. Now the time is to change that economic paradigm into something which is much more useful for our societies, ourselves as human beings, and for our organizations and companies. And that involves a dramatic shift from private self-interest to the common interest. And when that happens, there is no more capitalism. There is collaboratism, which is the new paradigm that we need to be seeking, and which I very strongly believe will happen in the course of the next 20 to 25 years. So subscribe to my channel, share it with your friends, look at the similar videos that I have done, and give your idea back to me. What is your thought about the future of capitalism and what happens after that? I want to hear that.